Hey guys, Nim Jr. QI video for you. I'm going to start this video with a little personal note. My motivation for making these videos is to help the FOE community grow. And not just as a video game, but as a community of people. And a lot of you guys have become legitimate friends to me. You're more than just video game players to me, you're people that I actually care about. So I want to help grow the game, and not just as a video game, but as a group of people. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about the quantum incursions. I think that was a really great addition to the game. The rewards are great, so QI is definitely worth doing. But beyond that, it's also one of the least time-consuming parts of the game. So my goal is to help you guys maximize your video game and minimize the time that you spend playing it. I mean, you can play as much as you want, but real life always comes first. So my goal is to help you guys get good at the game and minimize the time that you feel obligated to invest in it. Let's look at our key requirements for this. Shards requirement is 500, which is what everyone starts with at the beginning of the championship. So my system does not obligate you to use diamonds to buy shards. You can start this system with just the 500 shards that you begin with. But as the championship goes on, I strongly encourage you to save the shards that you generate from each season and roll those over into the original design of the next season. So in other words, don't use your shards to buy the boxes in between seasons. If you want to buy the boxes at the end of the championship, that's totally up to you. But in between seasons, throughout the duration of the championship, I would strongly encourage you to save all of your shards that you generate in a season and apply those towards the original design of the upcoming season. So the minimum requirement is 500. Everyone starts with that, but I would recommend at least 1400. If you generate more than 1400 throughout a season, buy a set of actions or whatever you want to do with that. But I would recommend at least 1400 to start the original settlement. Extra goods from ascended buildings required is 0, but I would recommend plus 40. And that will get you 2 goods expansions at the beginning of the settlement. That would be my recommendation, but it's not a requirement. Additional coin. This is actually a requirement to the system, so pay attention here, because if you jump into the system and you do not have ascended stuff in your main city generating extra coin for QI, you will hit a wall very quickly, and you will say bad things about me, but it won't be my fault, it'll be yours. You need an additional 50,000 coin per expansion that you intend to get if you are going to use my system. So the 1400s in shards is enough for 6 expansions with 50 shards left over, which we're going to use either for clearing obstacles if you have to. Ideally, we're going to use that to rush a baker pretty early on in the season. So that 1400 will give you 6 expansions plus the accelerated construction of a key part of the strategy. The plus 40 goods will give you 2 expansions. So I have 8 extra expansions. My screen is annoying sometimes. I have 8 extra expansions, so I'm going to need plus 400,000 in coin. Pay attention to this. Seriously, you will not have very much success with this system if you do not pay attention to that part. Supplies, not as critical. I recommend starting with a surplus of at least 100,000 from ascended buildings. 200 would be a little bit more comfortable. Not a huge requirement, but you do need some ascended supplies. If you start off with 0 ascended supply production, if you start off with the 75,000 supplies that everyone starts with, again, you will not have very much success with the system. So you need, I would say, a minimum of 100,000 supplies to start the system, ideally closer to 200,000 though. And this is coming from ascended stuff in your main city. So on a quick side note there, with the main city ascended stuff, a lot of the ascended stuff from recent events is pretty junky on main city collection. Like, you'll get a couple goods and they're all population negative, so they all consume population in order to plant, and they don't produce a whole lot. Maybe a couple goods, couple forge points, but nothing compared to other buildings that are giving a lot of forge points, a lot of goods, right? The advantage with those ascended buildings, even if they are junky in your main city, is that they're giving QI boost, and the QI rewards are some of the best that you can get in the game. So as a means to an end, set aside some of the real estate in your main city, plant the junky ascended stuff that you get from events. They're pretty easy to get, so plant a few of them each season and set yourself up to be able to replace the space of those junky ascended stuff with the QI rewards that you'll get from having an accelerated settlement. That's my recommendation, but you guys do need to pay attention to this requirement. 1400 on the shards is a recommendation, 40 on the goods is a recommendation, but coin and supply, these are requirements, and the system will not work if you don't have those minimums. It's 50,000 per expansion that you intend to get. Alright, I think that's it for the introduction. So I am going to make a little index here just so you guys can jump to whichever chapter you want as we go through the season. I'm going to do this whole season in one video. So that's it for the introduction. Let's get into quantum incursions. So this will be chapter 1.1. This is your initial setup. A couple key ingredients here. Start with 4 churches. The goal is to fill up the whole space with housing. Obviously, there's no supply production in here. There's a ratio with estate houses and multi-stories that I will touch on. But start with 4 churches. There's a really good possibility that you will run out of coin. So I started with, it was about 800,000. You start with 450,000. So according to my math, I needed an extra 400,000 for the expansions that I planted, but I only had 350,000 surplus in coins. So there's obviously some empty space, which is fine. It's really not going to be a big issue after the next collection. You guys will understand why. But that is why I recommended that, because if you get 8 expansions and you only start off with plus 100,000 in coin, you'll just have a big empty space in your city, and the whole system becomes counterproductive at that point. Like, it wouldn't even be worth the effort. Just follow the alchemist guide if you're that far off. So I ran out of coin, but got most of the city filled up with housing, so close enough. Start with 4 churches though, but leave yourself a column for 3 more would be my recommendation. Go ahead and fill in all your housing at that point. And if you still have extra coin left after planting everything that I've planted right here, go ahead and fill up that last space with houses. I did not have enough coin to do that, obviously, so those are still an empty space, but that's okay. Use your actions, go to the map. If you do get additional coin for the map, go ahead and replace those spots with a church now. There's no point in planting a house because my collection is 5 hours away, so if I planted the house now, it would be 4 hours behind everything else, so there's no point in planting a house. Go ahead and, if you do get coin for the map from this point, just plant a church in that spot. But start with 4 churches, leave yourself room for either 2 more churches or 3 more houses, depending on how your coin holds up. On the estate houses, pay attention to this is important. You need a minimum of 10 estate houses, but the more the better. The trade-off here is that this is a big part of the strategy. I am going to spend a little bit of time on this because you guys really do need to understand this. It's key to the strategy. The trade-off here is that the estate house is a little bit more expensive to build, so it costs 16,000, where the multi-story only costs 10,000. So you need a minimum of 10. I planted 15, so the 5 extra estates that I built consumed an extra 30,000 in coin, which is the exact amount of coin that I need or would have needed to fill up those last 3 multi-stories. So hypothetically, I could have started with 10 estates and been able to fill up my last 3 multi-stories, hypothetically. It's really not a big deal if you end up a few houses short. It's actually kind of a good thing. It's really not a big deal, but mind the gap on that. There's a balance between the cost of the estate house and then the value of it. So the value of the estate house is the multiplier effect, first of all. So it's giving 20% boost, even though I'm going to start my next collection at 20% happiness, so extremely negative. I'm still getting 46,000 out of my multi-stories. So I'm making a net profit off of 36,000 of coin off of multi-stories as I begin this upcoming collection. So I'm definitely going to be coin profitable, and that's the purpose of the estate houses. If you did the whole city in multi-stories and you start your collection at 20% happiness, you will be hemorrhaging coin on your first collection. So the advantage number 1 of the estate house is a multiplier effect to the multi-stories that we're going to collect and delete on the upcoming collection. I will do that part quickly. I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail because if this is directed at the experienced players, and if you guys have played QI before, you understand collect and delete, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail. The advantage with having multiple estates, though, is that it increases the coin production off of your multi-story and simultaneously reduces your population, and therefore reduces the amount of happiness that we need to collect and delete in order to gain. Does that make sense? So hypothetically, if you started off with plus 600,000 in coin, I would say plant probably 20 estate houses. The more of those that you can plant, the better. But that's it. That's it for the original settlement design. I have one more shards expansion. I usually buy up to the 350. I guess I'll plant that one. I have nothing to fill it with, but that's usually what I get on the shards as far as expansions. This system is designed for free players. If you guys want to spend diamonds to buy shards and accelerate the system, that's totally your prerogative. But my design that I'm going to share with you guys is designed for free players. Take your 500 shards that you start with. You'll be able to turn it into this and snowball your shards in between seasons to set up the next one. If you want to buy shards, that's up to you. But it's not a requirement in the system. So the shards I started this season with are all carried over from rewards from last season. And as the season goes on, you'll understand how I'm able to generate that many actions and that many rewards from the map just by using this system. So that's it for 1.1. Here's the original settlement. Start with 4 churches, minimum of 10 estate houses, but as many as possible, and then everything else is multi-story. The goal is to collect and delete and accumulate a bunch of alloy on our next collection, and we'll go from there. So talk to you guys soon. Bye. This will be our first collection of the season, so go ahead and swipe everything immediately. Totally kidding, don't do that. I am going to spend a little bit more time on this video just to help set you guys up for the rest of the season, but my subsequent collections in both worlds will go pretty quick from here. So let's look at a couple key ideas here. Observation number 1. When I was setting up the city, I ran out of coin, and I left a space for 2 churches, and said, if I can get coins in the map, go ahead and plant churches in those locations. Also bought an expansion with shards, so I was unable to fill it with houses, and I said in the previous chapter, it's okay if you have a few empty spaces, but there is a limit to how much empty space is actually going to be productive. I'm going to be cutting it pretty close in Arbahol, so after I finish Kinnear, I'm going to jump over to Arbahol and show you guys that layout. So the minimum requirements that I proposed are, I mean, plus or minus a little bit, but they're there for a reason. You do need to pay attention to that. Here in Kinnear, it's not going to be a problem. I did get some surplus coin as well as some extra supplies from the map progress, so that'll help with collection. Priority with your coin on the original settlement is to fill the whole space with as many houses as possible. And if you run out of coin and you have some empty spaces, that's fine. Hopefully you get some coin from the map throughout that first day, and those empty spaces will be filled with churches. The goal of our first collection here is to generate a minimum of 500 alloy. More is better, but a minimum of 500. And try to avoid deleting your estate houses if possible. And the best pattern to do this, 6 tall, 6 wide. You'll delete 9 houses and replace the space with 4 churches. I do recommend that you delete those houses one at a time as you go. Collect and delete, because sometimes just the act of deleting a house will get you into the next threshold of happiness. So from here we can collect and delete 1. Check your happiness as you go. I still need 1,000, so let me get the next group done. I'll be right back. So sometimes just the act of deleting a house will be enough to get you into the next threshold of happiness. So I do encourage you to delete them one at a time. Pretty obvious stuff, but I'll walk you guys through it on the first collection. Once you get the system down, it usually takes about 3 minutes to do collection. So I'm going to finish collecting this. Do not delete your estates, only do your multi-stories. Alright, full happiness now. Let's go ahead and swipe everything left. Remember, the goal of the first collection is to generate at least 500 alloy, hopefully more. We're going to use 1,000 alloy after the first 2 collections to build a bakery following the second collection. So as long as you get 500 alloy on the first collection, we know that we'll be able to get at least 500 alloy on the second collection, but probably more after the changes that we make on this first adjustment. So spend the surplus on gallows following this collection. Goal is to consolidate some of we started with 4 churches originally from the original design, and the original design had a combination of estate houses and multi-story because you start off with a limited amount of coin. But in the first setup, I said, if you have extra coin, plant as many estate houses as you can. So we're going to recreate that original settlement layout. reduce the number of churches that we start with, and then just fill everything else up with primarily estate houses. I would recommend keeping about 10 multi-stories just for the thing to be multiplied. Let me get that set up real quick. I'll be right back. All right, reconstruction is done. You guys are gonna dig this. The goal is to have as many estate houses as possible. Basically, we're just milking the entire original settlement for alloy, so that we can bypass the alchemist completely, jump straight into planting a bunch of bakeries. And then as we do the collect and delete as the season goes on, instead of collecting and deleting houses to replace with churches for the purpose of gaining happiness, we'll start collecting and deleting houses and replace them with breweries for the purpose of multiplying our bakers. And the breweries will never be permanently planted because they're not very productive on alloy per tile or supply production. Their benefit is to multiply the production of something like a baker. So they don't need to be permanently planted. You don't even need to collect them. Just plant them for the purpose of doing your collection and then delete them immediately afterwards. Same thing that we did with the churches. So I generated almost 700 in alloy. So I planted 3 gallows, which leaves 360 alloy remaining. But assuming that I'll be able to generate the same 700 alloy on the next collection, which there's no reason that I would not be able to, since the gallows are now replacing the churches that I had. A few of the churches that I had originally. So there's no reason why I would not be able to generate 700 alloy. Then we'll be able to plant a baker as well as more gallows on the next collection. Like I said in the first part of this, the more estate houses the better. And I've actually planted enough of them that even at the 20% happiness metric, they cost 16,000 to build, and they're generating 40,000. So even at the 20% metric, they're still coin profitable, and the amount of happiness that I need to reach the next level is 448, but the 3 gallows that I just planted will take care of that. So that's the advantage with the estate house. Number one, there's enough multiplier effect going on here that even though I'm starting collection at 60%, once the gallows are done, the estate houses are still going to be coin profitable. Plus, they'll be generating 6 alloy per house. So definitely going to ramp up the alloy a lot faster on this collection. The other benefit is that the estate houses have less population, and since we have no population demand, we don't need a lot of population. You know, there's really no reason to have multi-stories in this system, aside from the fact that they're cheaper to build on the original settlement. But once we can start moving away from that and just plant all estate houses, it's lower on population, and we're not really going for coin. We already have almost 2 million left over just from the delete and rebuild on the first collection. We already have 2 million in coin. So coin is really not the issue. What we're after is alloy. And the lower population on the estate house means that we're going to have to delete fewer of them to replace with churches before we hit the 150% metric, which means more of those houses will be collected at the 150% metric, giving 15 alloy per house. Does that make sense? I did leave a couple groups of multi-story houses, which with the multiplier effect are giving 130,000 times 18 of them. The primary objective, though, of this first collection is just to generate alloy in 2 separate collections. We need enough alloy to build a baker as soon as possible, and there's a temptation. I had 600, almost 700 alloy. There's a temptation early on in the settlement. Oh, I got this alloy, I need to ramp up my production, I need to increase my alloy production, so I want to plant some alchemists. Don't. I mean, there's really no justification to do that, honestly. If you get in a pinch and it makes sense for your particular season or your city, that's up to you, but mathematically it just really doesn't even make sense. It takes 2 days to break even on the alloy production, and you potentially never break even on the supply production. We went over that in the introduction. The math doesn't lie, just avoid it. So that's it for Conrear. Let's go check on Arbol real quick, make sure it's still alive. Alright, similar setup here in Arbol. I had some gaps from the original construction that I was not able to get enough coin to fill in. Fun fact, collect your town hall first, because you'll get the same amount of resources from that regardless. And that'll give you enough coin to... so that's why I said it's not a huge deal if you have a few empty spaces in your city. It's better to plant... if you run out of coins in the opening settlement, it's better to use the coins that you do have to plant houses, because that's the production timer that we're worried about. If you've got to scrape up a few coins at collection time to plant the churches that you need to fill in those empty spaces for the purpose of happiness, that's really not a big deal. The primary concern is just getting the production of the houses started. Alright, mostly done here in Arvahol. I need 20% or 20 more happiness, and just the act of deleting something is going to provide that for me. I'm going to be cutting it pretty close here in Arvahol. I started off with maybe 200,000 extra in coin. You can see that I've basically deleted my entire city with churches for the population that I need. Did not have enough coin to start the season off correctly. But it's still going to buff out. We're already up to almost 200 in alloy from the beginning of the collection. Let's go ahead and grab everything else. Up to almost 2 million in coin, and then a little bit over 550 on the alloy. And remember, the main idea here is to generate 1,000 alloy in 2 collections. If we are able to generate 553 alloy on the first collection, that tells me that I will be able to generate the same amount of alloy on the next collection. But the advantage now is that I have 1.7 million in coin to play with. So similar pattern to Conrear, but here in Arvahol, I'm only going to build 2 gallows. So that's going to drop my alloy down. I might actually only build 1. I'm going to play it safe and only build 1. And let me get this reassembled. I'll be right back. Alright, pretty much reassembled. I do have one more space that's either going to be a gallows or an estate house. If I do the gallows, I'm down to 350 alloy. So I'll need 650 alloy on the upcoming collection, but I think that's actually reasonable considering the amount of houses that I lacked at the beginning of this collection. I was still able to get 550 alloy out of the collection, and had a lot of multi-stories in the mix as well, whereas everything is a state house now. So I don't want that. I said it, but that's not the building that I'm trying to plant. I'm not great at multitasking sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead and go with the 2 gallows here in Arvahol. We need 650 on the upcoming collection to get a baker, but the amount of happiness that I need to start the collection at the 60% mark is only 354, and the gallows by itself is going to accomplish 250 of that. So collect and delete next cycle here in Arvahol should go pretty smoothly as well. That's it for the first collection. I don't think I've omitted anything that's more detailed than I'm really planning to do throughout the season. For the first collection, I figured it would be helpful to for you guys to actually see me go through it. Totally comfortable though. I still have over 1 million in coins, so the collect and delete thing, the buildings that we're collecting and deleting only cost coin. Churches cost coin, houses cost coin. Eventually we'll start planning and deleting breweries as a part of the collection routine, and that only costs coin. So and we're already up to 1.2 million on a baby city. So you really have nothing to lose with the system. The biggest thing to pay attention to is your alloy production. So I still have 300 alloy left. Well, you could have planted an alchemist. Yeah, I could have, and I would have sabotaged the rest of my season. So the guide that I'm presenting to you guys is called the Anti-alchemist guide, and there will be no alchemists planted in here, regardless of how much surplus alloy I have. I need 1,000. I want a baker. So I'll talk to you guys tomorrow morning. Alright, 2.1, collect and delete. The goal is just to get a baker today, and then hopefully a couple extra gallows. So this one's going to be quick. Let me get it done. So we've got 1,100 in alloy, so that's perfect for the 1 baker and 1 more gallows. That's all we're going to plant this round, and then as we get our happiness more and more under control, we'll need fewer churches during the collect and delete process, but we'll still do the same collect and delete routine, except to replace that footprint with breweries for the purpose of collecting the baker. So I'll get that assembled real quick, but that's pretty much it for 2.1. Alright, everything's put back together. No breweries planted, just the baker and 1 more gallows. That's it, and then the rest are houses. So this collection we started with 362 alloy that we rolled over from the previous collection, just so we knew that we would have enough to hit the 1,000 on this collection. So that means we generated 800 alloy just from the houses. So next collection we'll get the same 800 minus the space of the bakery, I guess, but roughly 800 in alloy from the housing, as well as 375 from the baker. So we'll actually be able to plant baker number 2 on tonight's collection, and might have a little bit left over for another gallows. After 2 bakers, up until this point, we haven't had supply production, obviously, right? So everything that we have from supplies is coming from the town hall, as well as the map. So the town hall gives 50,000 supplies, picking up a few here and there from the map, as well as what we started with from Ascended stuff. So we haven't had supply producers, but we haven't had a reason to spend supplies. The cost of Gallows is 36,000 in supplies. We planted 4 of those, so we're up to 160,000 in supplies on that. And then the baker is 100,000 in supplies, so we've used 260,000 of our supplies for the buildings that we planted. So just to reiterate the problem with the alchemist strategy, we anticipate needing supplies. Once we get into the season, we anticipate that. So trying to build the alchemist early on for the purpose of generating supplies is actually just depleting the initial supplies that you start with. But there's really no reason to spend those until you are able to actually buy the building worth buying. So on another quick side note, I had a teammate ask me about estate house versus multi-house. Or multi-story. You can do whatever ratio you want. I wouldn't do purely estate houses, honestly. I mean, you could probably get away with it, but without a thing to get multiplied by the multiplier, like the profit on the estate house is only 20,000 in profit on coin. So it's still profitable, but the profit from the multi-story house is going to give us this cushion on the coin side, where we're up to 5.5 million in coin right now. But this collect and delete pattern is not going to last all season, you know. Eventually we'll get to the point where we have 8 bakeries, start putting in some pillories, buy some goods expansions, things like that. So the amount of real estate that we have to use for just collecting and deleting houses is going to get smaller and smaller. So it is prudent to have a little bit of cushion on the coin side. So with that said, you can do whatever ratio of multi-story to estate that you want. I'm doing the 18 because each group will fit 4 houses, or 4 churches. So collect and delete those 18 plants my first 8 churches. So it just lines up with the grid. But you can do whatever ratio you want. Try to do mostly estate houses, though, just to reduce the amount of population that you're actually trying to make happy. But that's it. I think that's it for 2.1. I'm going to jump over to Arbahol. We may not be able to get a baker in Arbahol this collection, but fingers crossed. Let's go check on that one, see how that works out. Nice, barely got it. 1050 alloy, so cool. Won't have enough left over for a gallows, but that's all right. On another side note here, part of the limitation here in Arbahol is just the amount of space that I started with. So I bought the same expansion group. I bought up to the 350 shards for the shard expansions, but I didn't have as many goods expansions to start, so the space that I'm working with is a little bit more restricted. Less space, less houses, less alloy, right? That's part of the challenge. So there's a temptation to try and buy a goods building early on in the development. Wait until you get a baker to do that, because it, like, I mean, I only have 50 alloy to spare, so you would either have to choose between the expansion or the gallows, and the gallows is effectively an expansion because it reduces, it gets you closer to the happiness metric that we need, so you're collecting more of your alloy at its full boost. And it also reduces the footprint of the happiness churches that we need throughout the delete process. So effectively, a gallows is an expansion. It also just conserves your other resources, coin supplies, because remember, we're not producing supplies, so we really can't spend them until we are able to actually start producing them. So that's it for 2.1. I'm going to get the bakery planted. I do encourage you guys to rush it, obviously. Yeah, we worked this hard to get it, so I would encourage you to rush it. Looks like I need to come up with a couple extra shards. That's it for 2.1. I'll talk to you guys later, and we'll see you tonight. Alright, collection time. This is 2.2. The goal for this collection, as well as the 3.1 collection, is to plant 1 more baker, or 1 baker if you haven't already planted one, as well as 2 cartographers. So 2 cartographers, 1 baker, or your second baker. And these 2 collections, so Friday night and Saturday morning, represent kind of a singular movement, and it doesn't really matter which order you do these in. So the cartographer will increase your alloy, but you need a comfortable amount of supplies to go with the cartographer for the purpose of generating alloy and delay the construction of the second baker. So this collection will actually work out pretty well because I will be able to do the cartographer here in Conrir, but in Arbahol I will not have that many supplies, so I am going to do the baker in Arbahol for this collection. And then in Arvahol, I'll do the cartographers tomorrow. And then here in Conrear, I'll do the baker tomorrow. So you guys will get to see both sides of that equation. But that's the goal for 2.2 and 3.1. And it's kind of a unified goal. Let's get into the collection. It's the same routine that we've been doing but there is a small twist at the end, so please pay attention to that. Collect and delete housing, get it up to 150% happiness. Do not collect your baker. Go ahead, we have 150% happiness, so go ahead and collect all of your coin, but do not fat finger your baker. You will do yourself a pretty serious disservice. From here, continue collecting, or continue deleting housing in the same group of 6x6, but now we're going to start planning breweries, and just do this pattern until you run out of population. Cool, so down to 60 available population, but generated 9 million in coin from this collection. I'm up to 537 on supplies, some of that's from the map. You also do get 50,000 supplies from the town hall, so keep that in the back of your mind. Up to 815 alloy just from the housing. We know that we'll get another 375 from the bakery, so comfortably over the 1,000 threshold that we need for this collection. Let's go ahead and grab the bakery just so we are done with collection. Remember this pattern and get used to it, because as we get our happiness under control, we won't be collecting and deleting houses to replace with churches. We'll be collecting and deleting houses and replace them with brewery to go ahead and grab our limited number of production buildings. So the 2 bakers that I do have are going to behave like 6 bakeries because of the multiplier effect on the breweries. And as soon as you're done with collection, go ahead and delete the breweries. The only thing that you're losing in this process is coin, and we have plenty of that, as we've determined. Here in Conrear, I'm going to do the 2 cartographers, and the 2 cartographers generate 1,800 happiness, which replaces the footprint of 11.5 churches. So the 11 churches, the 12 churches down here, 11 of which I'll be able to replace with a pair of cartographers, will now become breweries, and that multiplier effect on even just a single bakery is enough to create the production value of 6 bakeries. It won't supplement the alloy production of a bakery, but in terms of supplies, just the act of adding 2 cartographers will take care of the supply production of a bakery. Multiple bakeries at that. Alright, reassembled here. On a side note, the ratio of estate to multi-story, there's really no wrong way to do it. You need to pay attention to your coin inventory. I would say 5 million in coin is kind of the threshold there. Anything below 5 million, probably plan a couple multi-stories into your rebuild. The main concern with coin, we're burning up a lot of it as we collect and delete. We're also generating a lot of it. But the part of the goal of the Anti-alchemist is basically to skip the whole middle phase of construction. So we're going to go straight from a whole bunch of estate houses into a city full of villaries. That's part of the goal. So 1 or 2 clapboards, maybe at the pinnacle of the development stage, but then from there just go straight into pillaries. So keep enough coins stockpiled. We haven't even done expansions here, aside from the original goods expansions, but I haven't done any of I haven't planted a goods building yet. So that's going to be a coin expense. We're going to have to print some troops at some point, so that's going to be a coin expense. Keep that in the back of your mind. Right now we're generating a lot of coin because the only thing that we have planted is coin producers, but as the season goes on, we are going to have to rely on some of the reserve that we're creating right now. So if you dip below the 5 million mark, put more multi-stories into your final construction. Good on supplies. We still have 400,000 left over from this collection on the supply side, so we're going to be good on that. And then tomorrow, 3.1 here in Conrear, now that I've accomplished the cartographers, I'll plant bakery number 2 here in Conrear. Arvahol is going to be the opposite because I did not have enough supplies to comfortably do the cartographers. 6 or a half dozen, it doesn't really matter which order you do it in. You will get more alloy if you do the cartographers first. But by 3.1, as long as you have both of those things accomplished, the system becomes self-sustaining at this point. We're getting all of our alloy and coin from our housing as we collect and delete, and then we're getting the supplies that we need from our single bakery, but you'll get the supply value of about 10 of them. So let's jump over to Arvahol. That one's going to be the opposite order, but just so you guys can see how that plays out. Alright, so Arvahol, you guys already know the setup. I'm not going to walk you through that again. The only thing left to collect is the bakery. So here in Arvahol, I'm going to do the second baker for today, and then we'll get the 2 extra cartographers tomorrow. Let me get that set up. Alright, Arval is done. No cartographers, and did not have enough alloy to plant another gallows. If you do have a little bit more than 1,000, go ahead and plant the bakery as well as another gallows, and give yourself a little bit of head start on the happiness. Hold off on your goods expansions. I haven't done them here in Arval yet either. The issue with doing those prematurely is the alloy cost of the goods building, and you'll get 60 alloy out of that chunk of real estate. So wait until you get your alloys sustainable before you start adding that space, and then from there you can just multiply the production that you already have established. But if you jump into that prematurely, you're just going to deplete your the alloy that is better invested on something like a bakery. You know what I mean? So I think that's a wrap. It's pretty clean, and after 3.1 it becomes self-sustaining. So alrighty guys, collection 3.1. So Saturday morning. Arval is pretty straightforward. We've got our second baker last night, so from 2-2. And today in Arval, we're just going to get a pair of cartographers. Collect and delete your housing, collect your bakers last, with some breweries planted to multiply the supply production. Very self-explanatory. Let's go check on Conveyor, because that one is going to be a little faster paced since we did the cartographers yesterday. We only needed to add 8 churches here in Conveyor to reach 150. So, makes the collect and delete process a little bit more fluid, but it also maximizes the alloy that we're going to get off the remaining housing. Make sure you don't collect your baker first. Let's get all the coin collected. Alright, coin is done. Let's see where we're at. We've got 950 alloy. We're going to get another 375 from the baker once we do collect that. Over 10 million in coin, but only 468,000 on supplies. So this is where the brewery thing comes in. Collect and delete your houses for pairs of brewery in the same 6x6 pattern that we did with our churches. And once you delete enough housing, you'll also be able to delete some of the churches to replace with brewery. So the goal is to get as many breweries into this collection as possible. Alright, so we've got 19 breweries. Was able to delete all the churches. 468 supplies. It's not going to change our alloy production, but the goal is to make that single baker behave like a couple supply producers just on the developing stage. And from here, we'll the goal in Conveyor is to plant our second baker, since we did the pair of cartographers last night. And then tomorrow, or tonight, I guess, when we collect, we'll end up with the same number of breweries, but now be multiplying 2 bakers. So not only the extra supplies off of 2 of them, but the alloy as well. It's pretty easy to build momentum. You can see where I'm going. But after this, so the 3-2 collection is probably when I'm going to start planning expansions. I would say that a reasonable goal is to get at least 1,500 in alloy during collection before you start planning your expansions. So that way you'll have enough alloy for, 1 baker, 1 large improvement, or 1 clapboard house, and then 500 alloy for a cartographer or a pillory as well. So that would be the threshold that I would aim for. I think that's it for 3.1. It's pretty self-explanatory, and everything in Arval is literally what I did here in Conveyor last night, so you guys already have that information as well. So I'll see you for 3.2. Bye. Alright guys, 3.2, so Saturday night. You already know how the collection routine goes, so I'm going to omit that. The goal of this collection for me, and if you're on pace with me, will be at least our 3rd baker, hopefully a 3rd cartographer as well. And in a perfect world, we would actually be able to get some expansions on this collection as well. Between the 3 priorities, we're definitely going to have 1,000 alloy towards baker number 3, or the next pair of cartographers. We're definitely going to be able to generate at least 1,000, but maybe not more than 1,500. So that'll be the deciding factor. But between the 3, if you have to prioritize, do the baker number 3 as your top priority, because the combination of those 3 bakers will generate enough alloy as well as supplies to self-replicate, basically. So you'll get enough supplies and alloy from that group of 3 bakers to plant baker number 4, baker number 5, etc. So at that point, all of the alloy that we're collecting from housing can be applied towards cartographers. Eventually we're going to need troops, pillories, things like that, so the housing alloy can be applied to other parts of the city, and the bakers will become self-sustaining. So if you do have to prioritize, go with the baker as priority number 1, go with the expansion as priority number 2, because once we plant this 3rd baker, we're going to reduce the footprint of our housing even more, so we're collecting even less alloy from the housing part of it. So that extra expansion or two will help you supplement the alloy. Cartographer number 3 is not as high of a priority. The first two cartographers are a big priority because we're starting off our collection at 20% happiness. So adding those first two cartographers gets us up into the 110% metric. But the last two cartographers, not a huge deal. Just continue collecting and deleting housing until you can do that. So that's the goal for this collection. Let's see what we actually come up with. Alright, ready for the bakery collection. I've got 17 breweries planted. I'm going to be like 100 alloy short of accomplishing all 3 goals, which is painfully frustrating, but it's still a pretty serious improvement over the Alchemist guide. Oh, that didn't update. That's weird. Alright, there it is. Yeah, 840 would be a long ways off from the goal. So needed 1700, came up with 1590. One of 2 solutions. This is designed to be a free guide for you guys, so there's a free solution to accomplish all 3 objectives in this collection. I'm gonna cheat a little bit and just rush the construction of another baker to get the alloy that I need. The free solution here would be to plant the goods building first, get the expansions that you want, delete the goods building, so we would have 1590 minus the 200 on the goods would bring us down to 1390. Get the expansions that you want and delete it would give you back 50, so we're now up to 1440. And from there, delete 1, 2, 3 gallows you'll get 25 back per gallows that you delete. That would give you plus 75. So you'd be up to 1515, which is enough for baker number 3 as well as cartographer number 3. So that would be the free solution. And at this point, it's not really a big deal if we're deleting the gallows because we're immediately replacing it with a cartographer, and you don't even have to rush the cartographer. It'll be ready for the collection tomorrow morning. That would be the free solution. In this case, I am going to cheat a little bit and rush the production of the baker just to squeeze the alloy out of it. Before I do that though, let's take a quick note of where we're at. We got 1590 alloy out of this collection, as well as 1.4 million in supplies. Coins were going to be going on for quite some time. Eventually we are going to plant some clapboard houses just to stockpile enough going into the end game where that's not a concern at all. But for right now, we're pretty comfortable on coin. Keep in mind, this is just day 3. So quantum supplies, we have plenty to get the at least 2 expansions as well as the upgrades that we're planning to make. Alright, you know what? For posterity's sake, I am going to do the free method. We've already got... It's tempting just to rush the baker, but for the purpose of creating a tutorial for you guys on how to play the system for free, I need to delete some breweries to create happiness, or population. For the purpose of creating a tutorial for you guys, I am going to do it the free route. Goods buildings you can do in any order that you want. I usually pick the 3 smallest buildings and plant the largest building first, the second largest building second, and then the smallest building last, and keep that one until I get all of my goods expansions completed. So I'm going to go with copper. Let me get those 2 expansions. Still have 800,000 in supplies, so I got this expansion and that one. Not quite enough to get expansion number 3 though, which is fine. That's a pretty good accomplishment. Go ahead and delete your 3rd gallows now. So now we have the 1500 alloy that we need for baker number 3 as well as cartographer number 3. Free method. I was tempted to cheat a little bit and just rush the baker construction, which, if that's in your guys' budget, that's totally up to you, and you would not be wrong in doing that. But for the purpose of creating a guide that is free to play and still equally efficient, I deleted 750 happiness from the gallows, and I'm about to replace it with 900 happiness. And the purpose of planning those is ultimately, like in the end game, those gallows are going to get deleted and replaced with pillories or cartographers anyways. So, jumped ahead of the 8 ball a little bit there, but for the purpose of creating this free system, I figured I would make the video that way. So let me get this reassembled real quick. Alright, that's a wrap. Everything is filled in. Like I said in the previous videos, maintain over 5 million in coin, I think would be the lower limit. The more the better, but maintain at least 5 million in coin. I have 10 million here, almost 11, 10.9. So, all estates, I don't have a multi-story in the reconstruction after this one. Rush your third baker, but you don't need to rush the cartographer. It will immediately begin generating actions, so that's a happy bonus, but the happiness is really what we need out of it, and that'll be ready for collection in the morning. So estate versus multi-story, plan as many multi-stories as you need to maintain your coin stockpile. Over 5 million, I would say, is a comfortable lower limit. Still coin profitable on the estate houses, just not generating a whole lot of surplus. So that's it for Conrear. Arval's, like, once you've seen this process, you already know what I'm going to do over there. I am not going to be that close on Alloy and Arval, though. Like, not close enough to fudge it with either the freeway or by rushing a baker. I won't be that close at all. So in Arval, I am just going to get the baker, as well as 2 expansions, and then get the cartographer number 3 tomorrow morning in Arval. From here, though, the system is literally self-replicating. We have 3 bakers, and we're still comfortable in supplies, 500,000 in supplies, but now have added additional space. So more houses to generate alloy at the beginning of the collection, and then also more space to plant breweries for the purpose of multiplying our now 3 bakers at the end of the collection. Third cartographer will get us up to we only need 701 to start at the 110% metric. That cartographer will generate 900 happiness, so we'll be starting collection at 110%. So 11 alloy off of all of these houses, and then get into the 150% that much faster. So at this point, it becomes self-sustaining. Use the alloy from your houses to add additional cartographer or pillory. Use the alloy and supplies from the bakers to add additional bakers. Pretty efficient. If you guys, just as a litmus test, like, why would you consider following this guide? Let's compare this side by side with the Alchemist guide. If you had followed the Alchemist guide up to this point, you would currently have, after collection, after everything that you guys just watched me do, this would be your end result. 4 frame houses, 12 estate houses, 2 multi-stories. On the supply side, you would have 8 alchemists, generating 800 roughly on alloy. That's the strategy of the Alchemist, right? We need alloy plus supplies. This thing checks both boxes. It really doesn't, though. You'd be getting 800 alloy off the Alchemist versus the whatever, little over 1,000 on the bakeries. 5 breweries, no breweries planted here. You would have 2 gallows. I still have 5. I just deleted 3 mid collection just to prove a point. But if you follow the Alchemist guide, you would have 2 gallows at the end of the process. 1 pillory and 7 churches. We're obviously ahead of that. You would have a very comfortable surplus of 143,000 coin, and you would have an additional supply reserve of 300,000. So, proof's in the pudding. It's 10 times faster than the Alchemist guide, and free, legitimately free, and I can say that with a good conscience because I did use the free method with tonight's collection. So, Arval is pretty self-explanatory. I will post an update on both of them at some point this season, but from here you can picture where I'm going. I think that's it for this one, so I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye. There it is, 4.2, so Sunday morning. We have 2 goals this collection. The second goal is going to depend on where your city is at. The first goal is to plant another baker, and the 3 bakers that we already have planted will generate enough alloy, specifically, but also enough supplies to pay for the 4th baker automatically. So now we can put our bakers on autopilot. Just the bakers that we do have are going to create enough resources to continue adding bakers. That frees up our entire housing collection, so all of the alloy from our housing can be applied to other city improvements. Do your map first. This is depending on how strong your main city attack is. This is potentially where newer players will start struggling on the map. So if your troops are dying, or if you're completely out of them, or they're just not strong enough, at this point you would consider planting possibly a decoration to increase your attack stats or generate some troops. I personally I go straight to the cannon guys. the Canon camp, I go straight to that. I know some people print trebuchets and that works for them. I personally skip that. A little cheaper on the alloy though on the trebuchets, so whichever works for you, this would be a good time to do it. If you're still good on the map, go ahead and continue planning cartographers and expansions. So here in Conrear, I'm going to do the cartographers and expansions. Be right back with the result. Alright, that's it. Got 2 more cartographers, 1 more bakery, rush the baker, another expansion, just fill it all back up with estates, a couple multi-stories. 10 million in coin, we've been able to maintain that. 300,000 in supplies. So cutting it pretty close on the supplies, but we're not spending a whole lot of it each collection. We're spending 100,000 on the baker, 200,000 on the cartographer. So those 2 improvements consume 300,000 supplies each collection, and then the rest of it can go towards expansions, troops, things like that. So that's it for 4.2. This is Sunday morning. I'll probably post 4.3 just so you guys can see the first five days of the construction, and then after that I'll just update you at the end of the season. So talk to you guys soon. Bye. Alrighty guys, 4.2. I misspoke this morning and called it 4.3, which is technically possible if you play every 10 hours. And I love QI, but not that much. So this is 4.2, and I just didn't drink enough coffee this morning. I will probably make another video that breaks down the math behind all of these maneuvers, but just to give you guys the game plan for now, I plan to plant, this is 4.2 collection coming up, 2 more bakers tonight, and then 2 more bakers Monday morning. So by 5.1, we should have 8 bakers. You should be getting a pretty comfortable, the 4 bakers that I have currently is generating 1,500 alloy, and then the housing itself should generate another 800-ish. So you should have a pretty comfortable 2,000, 2,200, somewhere in there at this point. So 2,000 of that, each collection, to another pair of bakers. So we'll have 8 bakers by Monday morning, and then the remaining alloy, so 300 or whatever. Tonight's collection will go to a goods building, which I'm going to leave permanently planted. I haven't really talked about this, but I do use my goods buildings systematically until the last goods building that I have left is going to be the smallest, and I leave that one permanently planted because the last few expansions are pretty expensive on supplies. So it's not worth the cost of collect or delete and plant multiple collections in a row on the ropery production. That one's small enough, just leave it planted for a couple collections to conserve your alloy, and then once you get your as many expansions as you want, go ahead and delete it. So with the 2,300 alloy from the 4.2 collection, 2 more bakers, plant the goods building, grab at least 1 expansion, basically burn up all of your supplies, because we don't need supplies in the morning. We will have 6 bakers, delete housing, replace with breweries, and generate as many supplies as you need for that collection, right? Same pattern for the collection 5.1. So by Monday night is where this transition will start happening. What we're going to run out of in the in-game when we start replacing the entire city with pillories, what we're going to run out of is alloy first before supplies. So the amount of supplies that you need to fill up a city grid of 25 expansions, which is based off the original 12 that you start with, and then 14 or 15 that you've added through goods or shards or whatever throughout the season. So let's start with a basis of 30 expansions, minus your town hall, minus the cartographers that we've already planted. Some of those are improvements that are going to carry over to the end game. So let's say we've got 20 expansions to fill up. You need 2 days worth of collection from that bakery group to pay for those pillories, but you need 7 collections worth of alloy to pay for that group of pillories. So the primary shortage is going to be on alloy. So with that in mind, the only thing that expansions cost is supplies and coin, which we have plenty of. So the primary cost on expansions is supplies, not so much alloy. So plant the goods building, just leave it permanently planted. By the time you have enough alloy to replace your entire city with pillories, you'll have more than enough supplies to pay for those expansions. On the actions note, I would actually recommend going with a doctor. Pillory and cartographer are the same efficiency per tile on actions, and they're both the most efficient out of all the buildings that you can plant in this new QI system. But the most efficient actions producer per alloy is going to be the doctor, and less alloy cost means less days that we need to maintain this collection, right? Because we have this development stage, we have a plateau where we just collect and capitalize on those resources, and then the end game where we replace everything with actions. So less alloy cost on the actions generation equals less time on the development stage. So doctor would be my goal. The pillory is a little bit more efficient, But pound for pound, if you plant the doctor 2 days sooner, it more than compensates for the efficiency on the delivery. So the final piece of this equation here, same pattern tonight for 4.2 and 5.1, going to be the same pattern. After 5.1 though, keep your breweries planted. Whatever you plant during that collection, as we delete estate houses, plant with brewery for the purpose of collecting baker. After the 5.1 collection, leave your city basically the way it is, with your breweries in place, with the minimum amount of housing that you need to do that collection, and just keep it that way. Start your 6.2 or 6.1 collection, collect all the breweries, bakers, everything, and then from there you should be able to delete all of the breweries directly into churches or directly into doctors for actions. So that will accomplish the transition for basically all of the free part of the city. We've invested alloy into bakers and cartographers and stuff like that. But after the 5.1 collection, all of this is just disposable hardware that we're using throughout the season to accomplish certain goals, right? And leave this whole group of real estate as breweries following the 5.2 collection. And then on 6.1, collect everything and replace this group with the end goal, which is doctors. Leave the productive buildings, leave bakers and enough houses to sustain that. But all the breweries that we planted on 5.2 will now become doctors immediately on the 6.1 collection. From there, as you need troops or if you need additional space or whatever, you'll still have a portion of the collective part of the city, the bakers at least, a couple houses. You'll have a portion of that productive part of the city to continue adding it as we get farther into the level 10, level 11 difficulty. So that's the end game. I might make a separate video that breaks down the math on why that's my recommendation. Get all of your goods expansions. I did crunch the numbers on that, and it's actually worth getting the 700 expansion on your goods. I did crunch the numbers on that, crunch some numbers on how many bakers per collection cycle it needs to actually break even on the benefit of it. So I have done some math on this, and I'll present that in a different video. But for now, that's the recommendation. 2 bakers on Sunday night, so that brings us up to 6. 2 more Monday morning, that brings us up to 8. Do Monday night's collection just the way it is right now with a bunch of bakers and a bunch of estates. But when you finish that collection, leave the breweries that you have planted, leave those in place to do the 6.1 collection. That's the fastest route forward that I've mapped out. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye. Quit BS, we're still on difficulty 4. I did get planted the ropery. I'm going to leave it there because I still intend to get... I would recommend getting all of your goods expansions. It's going to cost a little bit more on supplies, but the real obstacle to filling up your city with pillories or doctor or anything like that is going to be alloy. And we have to ramp up alloy production with things like bakers in order to get to that alloy point. There's a stopping point in the development stage where if you continue planting bakers until Sunday night, you will have a ton of supplies and a ton of alloy and not have a very productive season. So there is a breaking point in there. I would recommend getting all of your supplies expansions. I'm down to 700,000 in supplies. The cost of that expansion is expensive, and they get expensive, obviously. But planted 2 bakers as well this collection, so that'll pay for the expansion of Monday mornings, pay for the supply cost of Monday morning's expansion, rinse and repeat. But then do 2 collection cycles on the alloy. That's what we're going to run out of moving into pure pillories. So ropery is planted. I have enough for the goods expansion, and I found a spot without obstacles, which is the ideal. Side note here though, once you are able to start your collection at 150% happiness, which everything was filled up until this expansion, and I'm able to start with 150% happiness, at that point, pack in as many multi-stories as your happiness will allow. The purpose of an estate is to multiply coin production. We're good on coin. We have 13 million in coin, so that's not really the issue anymore. It's just to minimize your population and therefore minimize the demand for happiness. But once you get a few cartographers planted, you'll be able to comfortably do that. So I'm going to plant estate houses probably in the last 4 pockets there. Just less collect and delete and get up to the euphoric mark. Quick side note though, on the balance of estate versus multi-story coming into the end game, because after the 6.1 collection, you're basically not going to be collecting coin anymore. Originally I had considered planting a clapboard house or maybe a few of them here, but after actually playing through the system that I've been brainstorming, I don't really see the purpose. I think we can go straight from multi-story plus estates. We've generated plenty of coin. What we need right now is just enough population to keep the bakers alive for a couple more collections, squeeze the alleyway out of that. But should be transitioning into doctors by 6.1, 6.2 at the latest, I would think. So at this point, don't really need the coin. So just go with the estate houses, minimize your population, squeeze out the alleyway out of it. That would be my recommendation there. But with that in mind, do plan enough multi-stories to rack up your coin on the last couple collections here, because after that we probably won't be collecting coin. So I think that's a wrap. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. Alrighty guys, 5.1 and 5.2. So Monday morning and Monday night. This will be the last video in the series. I'm going to try and keep this one fairly quick, but there is a transition. This is a transitioning point. So early on, we're trying to ramp up our development. We talked about a plateau where once you ramp up your development, just leave it there for whatever period of time. In my system, it'll be probably 2 or 3 collections that you need to sustain that, and then transition into the end game. So 5.1 and 5.2 are kind of a unified movement between both collections. It's not a really big deal which order you do it in, and in hindsight, there's some things I would have done differently in 5.1. Not a big deal, but I'll share that with you too. The goal for 5.1 and 5.2 though is to button up all of our development. So we'll be done planting any of the productive buildings that we intend to plant after tonight's collection, and then from there just stockpile enough resources until you are able to delete the entire city and replace it with actions. So that's the goal of 5.1 and 5.2. Collection is partially ready. I've got a couple bakers that are a little bit behind, but we can start getting into the strategy of it. So in 5.1, I added 3 more bakers. I got exactly 3,200 alloy. Well, it's 3,203 alloy. So enough for 3 bakers and then 1 frame house, which is in the back corner up there. So 3 bakers, 1 frame house. In the future, I think I'm actually going to stop at 8 bakers, and the frame houses are a key part of this transition here. So omit the 9th baker and plant 4 extra frame houses. I think on 5.1 would be a little bit more efficient. Not a big deal at this point, but I think that would be a little bit more efficient in hindsight. I had originally considered planting some clapboard houses, but after actually playing through this system, like I've been brainstorming it for a while, but actually playing through it, I don't think the clapboard house is honestly justified. The purpose of the frame house is primarily to consolidate our population going into the end game. We definitely don't need the coin, but it's primarily to consolidate the population, because the state houses are providing 50 population, and up until this point, we've been using them to collect and delete and wrap up alloy, right? But we're at the point in the development where what we really want is actions, and the bakers that we need to generate the alloy to buy those actions producers consume a lot of population. So right now, with the estate houses, as many as we have, is really restricting our space, our available space to plant actions buildings. So at this point, the frame house is primarily to consolidate our population into the smallest footprint possible, but also to supplement the alloy that we'll be losing once we delete the estate houses. So after 5.2, I should be mostly done with the estate houses. I might have 4 or 5 of them scattered around after the collection is done, but should be mostly done with the estate houses as well as multi-stories. All of our population should be consolidated into frame houses for the smallest footprint and the least amount of alloy. So clapboards give a little bit more population, but way more expensive on the alloy. And right now, most of the alloy that we generate should be earmarked for the actions producers. I'm down to 58,000 on supplies, which is actually fine. We need, in order to fill up the city with pillaries or doctors or whatever you guys want to plan is totally up to you. I recommend the doctor. I think it's the most efficient actions producer per alloy, not necessarily the most efficient per tile, but per alloy. And considering we have 3 alloy right now, the efficiency on alloy is probably an important metric. You guys can fill it up with whatever you want, but in order to fill up a city with any of those the 500 level upgraded cultural buildings, you need about 4 collections worth of alloy from the bakery group that we have currently. But you only need 2 collections out of that bakery group to cover the supply cost of that upgrade. So right now, the 58,000 in supplies is really not concerning. By the time I get enough supplies to fill the whole city with doctors, by the time I get enough alloy to fill the whole city with doctors, I will have a surplus of supplies. So with that in mind, I do intend to get 2 more expansions, my last 2 goods expansions. I am about halfway done with the next one, so I'll just have to get the last one, the 700 mark. And at this point, it only costs supplies because the ropery has been planted for a few collection cycles now. So the only expense is supplies. Basically burn up all of your supplies, get your last few expansions, plan a troop building, leave that planted because we probably won't have supplies to actually produce troops, but just plan it, have it ready for tomorrow, and at this point we will be done with the production side of the development. So after tonight's collection, a couple goals that we're trying to accomplish. We want to be done with our goods expansions, so finish that project completely, get all of them. That way we're done sending supplies on expansions. Once we plant the frame houses that we intend to upgrade, we will be done with supply purchases on towards the housing side, and then bakers, there's no need to plant anymore, and I should have stopped at baker number 8 to be honest. So we're done sending supplies on that part of the development as well. I would also recommend deleting your gallows after this collection. Early on, the gallows are a good filler. Like if you generate 1100 alloy from a collection, plant 1 baker, you have 100 alloy left over. Especially when we're doing collect and delete on the early stages where you're starting off with 20% happiness or whatever, that gallows is super critical in the opening stages. But at this point in the development, the gallows is really not needed anymore, because at the end of the collection, we're going to delete all this housing, replace it with breweries, so that we can squeeze out as much supply from tomorrow morning's collection as possible. So our housing, our population, like I have almost 2,000 extra population right now. And up until this point, it's been useful for generating alloy, specifically, not so much coin, like I said, but primarily the alloy that we've been after. But after tonight's collection, there's no reason to have 2,000 surplus population. So without the surplus population, you don't need the surplus happiness. So go ahead and delete some of those gallows at this point. Those are mediocre on the recharge metric. It's primarily the cheap happiness that we're after in the opening, but in the end game, those are buildings that you would want to replace with pillories or whatever anyways. So this would be a good collection to delete any of the extra gallows that you have, as long as your happiness can sustain it. Get the extra alloy out of those, but primarily just free up the real estate of your city as we transition into the end game. So got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to get started on the collection. You guys already know the routine. Collect and delete housing, replace with breweries. You guys already know the routine. I'm going to get started on that, and I'll be right back with the end result. That's pretty much a wrap. I planted 8 frame houses. I gotta wait for those to finish completing. There's a few back behind the town hall as well. Planted 8 frame houses. Once those are completed, I'll go back through and delete some more multi-stories and squeeze in as many breweries as I can. Still have 1,000 euphoria. Once those frame houses cook, it's gonna chew up a portion of that euphoria, but it's gonna be immediately deleted after that anyway, so not really a big deal. Leave your 5-2, after 5-2, leave your city set up like this with the breweries in place. You'll lose a little bit of alloy per tile on the brewery versus a city full of estate houses. You'll lose a little bit of alloy per tile on that, but this is literally going to be a 1 collection sort of thing, just to squeeze as much supplies out of it as possible. I did finish up the goods expansions though, so that chewed up basically all of our supplies. We're down to 23,000 supplies now, but leaving the breweries planted overnight, we'll be generating 1/3 off of each of the bakers, so 3 million just from the bakeries, as well as a little bit extra off the breweries themselves. Obviously fine on coins still, a little over 12 million, so that's not going to be an issue. Alloy, I ran out of supplies on the frame houses plus expansions before I was able to use all my alloy, which is actually a good problem to have. We need about 20,000 alloy to transition to a full city of doctors or pillaries or whatever. You need about 20,000 alloy minus the cost of any of those improvements that we've made already. So the handful of cartographers. So just keep that in the back of your mind. We're gonna run out of alloy before we run out of supplies going into the end game. But after 5-2, just leave the breweries set up in place for the supply benefit of tomorrow morning's collection. Tomorrow morning we'll get 3375 alloy from the bakers, and then 1012 alloy from the frame houses. So pretty close to 4500 on the alloy just from those two groups, and then we'll get whatever, a couple hundred from breweries and multi-stories as well. So call it 5,000 basically. 5,000 is enough to plant 10 doctors. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Enough alloy as well as supplies to just immediately replace the brewers that we leave planted overnight for that collection. You'll be able to immediately replace at least 10 of those, maybe 11, just straight to doctor, and then do a couple more collections, chip away at your remaining buildings and replace with pillar or doctor as you generate enough alloy. It's primarily because, like I said, you need about 20,000 alloy to scrape your city and fill it with doctors, but you only need about 6 million in supplies. So we'll have enough supplies after 2 collections, but it'll take 4 collections to generate enough alloy. So once you get your breweries and everything, all your multi-stories, once you get all that deleted and filled up with doctors, I would say just keep, I don't know, at least 6 of your bakers and a handful of the frame houses. Just keep those for a couple collections, and then fully delete everything by Thursday morning would be pretty generous. So I think that's it for the development stage. This is the Anti-Alchemist guide. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope it's not only practical and productive for you as you play QI, but I hope it's actually a simpler system than the Alchemist guide. The Alchemist guide had a lot of very awkward maneuvers and just, I don't know, it was always just choppy to me. But this system, I hope, is a little bit cleaner for you guys, so that as you do play through it, you get in a routine of just plant a whole bunch of houses, delete them, fill with breweries, collect your bakers, delete it all again, fill with houses. It's pretty fluid, back and forth, repetitive, and this is Monday night, so once these frame houses are cooked, I'll be able to squeeze in probably, I don't know, space-wise, probably 4 or 5 more breweries. Get that much more out of the supply collection of the bakers in the morning, and basically into the end game, and we're halfway into the season. So I think that's a wrap. I'll talk to you guys later. God bless and goodbye.